G'day, this is problem number 13. Maybe not so lucky for the Knights Templar, but or Friday the 13th, but yeah, lucky number 13 for us. And we want to talk to you about increasing the momentum in your position. And you want to think batteries and barrages. Now, the knight on e5 isn't just strong because it's in the center and it's attacking, all around their position. It only really has torque on a couple of pieces, the pawn at f7 and the pawn at c6. What we actually see here is that black has played for space on the queen side and hasn't finished development, and we also see here that white has played in the center, has actually much more central control, and has a position where that already has a heavy in the center, and that's a huge thing, the rook on e1, and that is actually an open file. Forget all the pieces there, that's an open file. So the rook's on an open file, so it's it's hitting on that knight. It's a battery, so the knight can move, discovering the rook. And so we also have a barrage with the bishop and queen hitting that pawn that's not really doing much, combined with the knight, and there's nothing. So you have a numbers matchup. You have 3 attacking, and there's the rook and the pawn defending. And so you've got to definitely consider what sort of bang you get for that. That's a numbers matchup in white's favor. But just at a basic level, how can you increase the pressure against the king? But how? Because obviously you've got a good grip on the center. How can you increase your momentum of your position? You've got to be looking for batteries and barrages to increase your momentum. So in this point here, what leaps out should it leap out at you right now is queen to d3. Why is it queen to d3 so powerful? Well, it's threatening bishop takes knight, and then queen, and harassing queen takes h7. And also the pawn to h6, trying to drive the bishop doesn't change that. Nothing changes with that. So after queen d3, this pressure, this threat you've actually accelerated. You've actually moved queen to d3 with a real threat. And so black plays g6, and what actually happens with this once g6 is played is now the knight on e5 has more torque, has more force that it can wrench and lever open the position. And and remember, you have a queen and bishop hitting on g6 with all of that momentum of the queen and bishop combined, plus you have the knight. Remember what I said, the rule of 3. And so 1 piece to sacrifice, 2 pieces to make. And also look at your engines of war now. You've got the queen bishop barrage, and you've got the knight rook battery. Okay, and the knight's the firing piece. But at the moment now, the knight doesn't really have, its torque is not very strong. Once the queen moves to d3, suddenly that knight has a great deal of torque, and it discovers the attack of the rook on the bishop. That's an important point. The pawn at g6 is defended by 2 pawns, but when you look a little bit deeper into it, the pawn on f7 is a piece cannot defend 2 at once. It can, but often you can overwork it. And so the pawn at g6 is only defended once, and you have 3. So when you look at that numbers matchup, it becomes quite devastating. So knight takes g6, after pawn to g6, knight takes g6, the h pawn takes g6, and now you've discovered the attack. Look at the momentum of what's happened to that rook. It's now the value of the rook it's obviously is 5, but it's attacking 2 squares, so its momentum has now gone from from being just 5, because obviously it's attacking that knight square. So 5 by 1 is 5. We can see how suddenly it's doubled. Okay, suddenly its momentum with that knight move, knight takes g6, is huge, and it's hitting on that bishop. So after h takes g6, rook takes bishop. And the reason is because the pawn is overworked. The pawn is defending 2, so you put it to the sword, you put the bishop to the sword, and it can't play. The f pawn captures the rook, and the reason is because what happens is queen takes g6, and that is going to lead to mate. Defenders will be removed, and the queen's head will be on the chopping block. So we see here the combination of a barrage and a battery, and we see how playing for maximum activity, maximum momentum, and we can see how that numbers matchup was just quite brutal, and we can see how fragile g6 was, and as a square. And by playing g6, you provided the knight with exactly what it wanted, which was more torque, able to wrench open the position at g6. And the bishop is in a very active square, threatening a very important defender, which is very, very critical to understand. So, but just from a momentum point of view, and just from an opening point of view, and development point of view, queen to d3 completes white's development, whereas black's development is not finished, just from a basic point of view. So that means its position has provided, the development has provided as much impulse as possible to white's momentum. Okay, that it is so development, momentum, and then checkmate. So, and win the game. Obviously, you need to break through, and by playing aggressively, the bishop g5 does play a role as well. So, should really say the rook's attacking, the bishop's attacking, the queen's attacking, the light square bishop is helping attack. So, and also obviously that momentum with the queen d3 is just, it goes, it gets attracted to a major non-contact force, the king. It gets attracted to that king, which gravity affects the momentum, and it definitely accelerates that momentum. All right, it affects that momentum. All right, and it's like almost like the queen's being slingshot right from the center, right over to the other side, edge of the board, corner of the board, and just by that gravity of that king, pulling everything together. And the fact is that white has a superior center. White has a knight in the center, and black is undeveloped, and white's actually finished development, has achieved as much momentum as possible in the position. And so sometimes a beginner in this position here would do something like, oh, okay, I want to attack the pawn on c6, so play queen to f3. Okay, and if queen takes d4, then, knight takes c6. Attacking the queen, attacking the knight, discovering the attack on the rook. But the main thing is you want to actually think, and because that rook is a minor center of gravity, and it is so it is understandable, but the king is a major center of gravity, and you can bust through the center much easier with the threat of potentially bishop takes f6 and then capturing the king at the pawn at h7 and checkmating the king. So we also we can just see just an example of the development momentum theory in action, which is that white has superior momentum. All right, white has superior momentum in the development, and black's, instead of controlling the center and developing, has decided to go for space on the queen side, and the center wasn't closed or controlled. White has control over the center. White has space in the center. So there we have it. Make sure you watch my videos where I talk about the 5 centers: the open center, the half open center, the closed center, the unresolved center, and the pawn center. So we can see here the isolated d pawn is great. It's supporting the knight outpost, the knight strong square, I should say. It's not being really pressured at the moment, and the open e-file is being used, which is very, very good. And so a beginner may also think, okay, I might play, bishop takes knight, and then move the queen. Okay, and that is an idea, but you actually need to think about what will give you the most momentum. Okay, so that a bishop takes knight. Obviously, it's a capture. It accelerates your position. But in this case here, I think it's obvious that completing your development and giving the most momentum and impulse possible to your position for that momentum to bite into that position. And it literally, you're threatening mate. The threat is it's another acceleration. Instead of bishop takes, you're literally threatening bishop takes and then mate. So threatening to win a piece. And that bishop it's actually semi-loose. It's actually a minor cog. It's a minor center of gravity. It is a target because it's only defended once. Only when it's defended twice does it become a strong piece. And so you want to understand the strong and weak forces. You want to understand strong squares, strong pieces, weak pieces, overworked pieces, pieces doing more than one thing can't actually function. And it's only a weakness if it can be exploited, obviously. But that knight and e5 is absolutely glorious. She's ready to jump the gate and bolt, and basically the king is provoked to create a weakness, and you're able to, and then it's a numbers match. Three attacking, only really one defending, and the rook proves that by rook takes e6. And using just from a basic momentum point of view, you can see how you want to finish your development. You can see which is going to give you maximum momentum, and you're using that d pawn in a way as a cover so you can maneuver. Cover and maneuver. So your maneuvers are safe, and your king is perfectly fine. Doesn't have any pieces defending him at the end of the development, but that's okay. You have pieces in their half, and they don't have any pieces in your half of the board, which is fantastic. If you can finish the development phase, T1 to tempo 1 to tempo 2, or all that's in between, if you can actually finish that, with none of their pieces in your half of the board, you're doing great. Whereas if you have pieces in their half of the board and the development's finished, you've definitely impulsed your position. You've definitely developed and created that energy, because it's really just one type of energy, converting into another. That's what it is. And obviously, what's happened here is, in defense of your king, you've increased the torque on your position. The fact that knight now can bite in and lever open your position is significant. Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I can move the world. All right, take care. Bye.